Hello and welcome to, I think this might be the first edition of a recap with myself, Carter Elliott, and Heat Check's own Riley Davis, our ACC correspondent. I still call him our ACC correspondent. I know we have other people who try to take the claim to Sleepers Media ACC correspondent, but it'll always be Sir Riley Davis in my eyes. Riley, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man, and I appreciate that title. It is one I wear with pride. There's a lot of slander that gets thrown at the ACC. Much of it is deserved, although I don't think we're quite as bad as a league as most people want to say because we've talked about it on this show before. The Big Ten, Big East, they're both struggling too. The ACC just they struggle more loudly, but it's still a title that I claim proudly. And I'm here to talk some hoops, here to talk some Clemson, some Miami, talk about two teams that could end up winning this league or at least be in contention.
Yeah, when you're such a prominent conference like the ACC, they scream out your failures and they whisper your accomplishments. That's
Mhm.
kind of what really happens here. But
Well said.
tonight we had two teams that I think, if you ask people preseason, there was a good amount of people and probably some people still today that look at Clemson and Miami as ACC favorites. I mean, coming into this game, Miami hadn't really had a marquee win. I believe that they actually hadn't beaten, and not, don't quote me on this, but I was told this, that I don't think they beat a top 100 team yet. I think every top 100 team that they played, they ended up losing that basketball game. So this was a really big game for them, an ACC home win against what I consider a really, really good Clemson team. What was one of your main takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think like if you look at Miami's schedule, it's laughable. It's hilarious how many terrible teams they've played, and they've even squeaked by a couple of bad teams too. This was a game they desperately needed, especially if you think about the last time they played a team on this caliber was against Kentucky, and that was an absolute dog walking, and the Cats ran away with it in the second half. But I thought, Clemson, or excuse me, Miami did a little bit of that themselves the second half of the game. Clemson was able to pull ahead by 6 at halftime. But those second 20 minutes, it just seemed like a switch flipped, especially with both Matthew Cleveland and Nigel Pack. Like, I don't think either of them missed a shot the entire second half, and they were scoring a variety of ways. Of course, you had Pack hitting off the dribble threes coming off of screens but Cleveland hit some threes as well. I know he shot it way better this year, but he even cooked a little bit in the mid-range because I know Brownell threw a zone at them probably with like 4 minutes left, and they just stuck Matthew Cleveland right in the middle of the 2-3 zone and let him go to work. I was really impressed by this offense and how it kind of seemed like it started clicking in a way that we haven't seen this year. Definitely, at least not against that level of competition.
Yeah, I think this is kind of you saw tonight why people were so high on Miami, I think, including myself included, because the offense just looked so great tonight as far as the spacing. It was like there was all spacing, and then you had Norchad down low, and
Hmm.
everything just started flowing on the offense. And look, whatever you think about this Miami team, one, we know one thing's for certain. Once they get in the NCAA tournament, Larry Nagg is going to have those boys hooping. Okay, we know that for a fact. He has players like Nigel Pack on his team. Nigel Pack was made to have himself a tournament run. Isaiah Wong was the player that had that last year. I think Nigel Pack is going to be the player this year for Miami. But I mean, they won this game. They ended up winning by 13 points in this game. They
Hmm.
got 0 points from their bench in this game. 0 points. They shot 53% from the field, just about around 46% from three. And it was all the starters in this game. Nigel Pack had 25. Matthew Cleveland had 23. Norchad had 23. George pitched in 12. Joseph pitched in 12. There's just they got guys on this team, and it
Hmm.
looks really good when they space it out and they let those guys cook basically. And they did all this without one of their better players in Wooga Poplar. So like this was a very impressive win. And also, despite the win, it tells you a lot about this Miami team because when I watch teams that need a marquee win, and you can tell the difference between a good and bad team in my eyes, whether they take advantage of the moment. Like
Right.
they're playing a good Clemson team, but they have the opportunity to play them at home. And that gives them an advantage. And that's one that you want to get and you want to win. And they took advantage of that. And that's what good teams do. A bad team would have dropped tonight's loss. They would have been like, we don't have Wooga.
Hmm.
We're just not at full strength. We're not going to win this game. No, this team, they were an underdog at home and they became wolves. Shout out to my boy G Wizzy who came up with that. So it was a very impressive win for Miami.
Yeah, I think you are spot on with that as far as how a team like this responds. To needing to step up in a moment, to needing to notch a signature win like that. And it's something that we've kind of gotten used to Miami doing these last two seasons. When you look at the Final Four run, you look at the Elite Eight run the season prior. I know you have, at least off the record, said that Ken Palm this season is kind of like Patrick Ewing on the Magic. His metrics are cooked. His algo needs some adjusting. But year in, year out, Ken Palm his Algo has Miami kind of outside the top 40 nationally, or the top 30 nationally. But when it comes down to crunch time, they have a habit of rising to the occasion. And I think they still struggle defensively, but they're really opportunistic at forcing turnovers. And that's exactly how they were last year when they made the Final Four. It's exactly how they were in 2022 when Charlie Moore, that, the well traveled Kansas DePaul transfer, was getting steals left and right. And they turned that on again tonight and were able to turn Clemson over down the stretch in clutch situations where it was like Clemson got the game within 6 or down to 4 again, and they were able to step up with a big shot step up with a big stop or force Clemson into a bad shot. And that's what you want to see if you're a Miami fan, to at least be able to compensate for some of the defensive deficiencies that, this roster's probably going to have, with the lack of size in the backcourt with Pack out there, or the lack of depth that the team is probably going to lean into like a 6 or 7 man rotation.
Yeah, my old high school basketball coach, who was our before the days of offensive coordinators, he was the offensive coordinator of my high school basketball team. And we had a team my junior year. We weren't necessarily all about stops. And he used to say this great line. He said, "You know what? Three's worth more than two. Get that ball out the net and let's go score." And sometimes that worked. And darn it, we were pretty good that year because three was worth more than two, and we were very effective on offense. But on the flip side of this, Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that you have been a big loud supporter of Clemson. I believe that did you have them winning the ACC, or was it like top two, top three?
That was my preseason pick, was Clemson winning the
Your
ACC.
your preseason pick. So flipping to them in this game, what are you wavering on Clemson at all, or what are your thoughts on it? Because I'll let you go, but to me personally, the downfall of Clemson, or what won't get me all the way there in my eyes, is that I think that defensively, especially like Joe Girard, we
Mm-hmm.
know who Joe Girard is. He played the 2-3 at Syracuse. Credit to him. I think he's actually played better defense than I expected him to, but he ain't got nothing for Nigel Pack. He doesn't have anything
Yeah,
for really good guards, in my opinion. And I don't think Clemson's going to win many games where they give up 95 points. That's
right.
the nature of them. That's who they are as a team. PJ Hall played well in this game. He fouled out in 29 minutes. That definitely hurt them in my eyes, at least. Where are you at with this Clemson team after this game?
I wouldn't say it affects my view of them long term. I mean, Coral Gables, it's funny how you go into that arena and it's not necessarily like that crowd is super lively. I can't say Miami has ever seemed like they've had good fan support for football or basketball over like the past, I don't know, 2 decades since we were growing up and Ken Dorsey was slinging that thing to Andre Johnson
I mean,
and
we're getting Ken Dorsey and Charlie Moore references in the this is beautiful stuff right now.
but yeah, it's like it's not even like it's a crazy crowd or anything, but as a UNC fan, I mean, I've seen my team struggle to get wins at Miami throughout my existence throughout my fandom basically. It's a tough place to win. But yeah, like you said, with PJ Hall fouling out and sort of being saddled with that foul trouble throughout the game, I kind of think their defense falls off a cliff when he's not out there. I mean, he's asked to do so much as far as cutting off the basket and cleaning up the mistakes of someone like a Joe Girard, who's, not never been known for his defense. I think Chase Hunter's pretty good defensively. And then I like that they still have size like a Chauncey Wiggins, like RJ Godfrey. Both those dudes give you length on the perimeter. And then Shefflin at the same time, I know he's really tough on the glass. And just like a big burly dude who's probably not fun to go against, but maybe he's sort of mechanic shaped. like I can't exactly say he looks like he's the most agile out there. Like maybe you can target him if you're a more athletic wing centric team like a Matthew Cleveland type or like a Keyshawn George that Miami has there. But yeah, what's your take on that front court pairing or even Clemson's defense as a whole?
Yeah, as far as the front court pairing, it to me, I think it's a luxury to have Paul and Shifin in some games. Like
Mhm.
I go back to the Bama game, and basically PJ Hall am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Shifin?
Is Shefflin.
Shefflin? Okay, my apologies. They were just able to dominate that game. Like they
Hmm.
down low, out toughed Alabama, got Bama
Yep.
in foul trouble. Like that was great for that game. In this game, where they're a little bit more spread out, a little bit more wingy, maybe would like to see maybe a little bit more like PJ Hall at the five. And then I'm
Hmm.
not sure what the other wing option would be in this. I mean, you could go with a guy like Dylan Hunter, maybe a little bit undersized, but there's other players I think you can kind of throw out there that are more wingish, and then maybe PJ Hall is the five position. I think that could be maybe an audible that Brownell could probably put into his
Yeah.
equation. But look, it is very hard to win on the road in conference play. Like that's just the nature of college basketball. We have watched a lot of games. We've seen some very weird results of teams going on the road. So I don't think there's anything to hang their head on. They weren't going to win every single ACC road game this year. It is very hard to go beat good teams on the road in the ACC. It's actually hard to beat bad teams at time on the road in any conference. So there's things that could change for Clemson. I definitely think the defense should be more of a focal point, but also at the same time, I don't know who is gonna beat Miami if they play the way they did the second half.
Yeah.
Like that was some special offensive basketball.
And I will say, even like Clemson got some good shots and just didn't make them. Like Joe
Yeah,
Girard was, I don't know what the final numbers were. I think he still shot 4 for 10, 40%, but the second half, uh, he was 2 for 6 in the second half. But even some of those threes, like they felt like they were in garbage time. Like at least in those key moments where Clemson was trying to get back in it, Girard had a couple clean looks. I know he had one kind of off balance coming off a screen that maybe wasn't the best decision, but still there wasn't necessarily a defender around him that like you expect him. He's hit a lot of those shots so far this season, to where maybe, yeah, I wouldn't sweat it too much if I was a Clemson fan.
yeah. I think in wrapping it up, great win for Miami. Nothing that deters me from thinking that Clemson's a good team. Clemson's still going to be a factor in the ACC. It is January 3rd, January 3rd. Yeah,
Yep, third.
we're things are going to be okay for Clemson, but credit to Miami, they took advantage of the opportunity. They got a really good win. I know that I got your thoughts on Clemson. Just to wrap this up, though, how are we feeling about Miami? Is this just like a okay, great offensive second half, or I mean, you mentioned how they look a little bit more spread out and free on offense. Is there
Mhm.
something there that you see this Miami team maybe turning a corner as they head into ACC play, and that, the non-conference cupcakes that they had kind of go away?
Yeah, I think, hmm, I kind of said at the beginning of the recording that I sort of see them as contenders. I think they can get in that conversation if we look up on March 4th and Miami is just ripped off a 16-4 ACC stretch and they're like co-champions with a UNC or Duke or something. Like I wouldn't be that surprised by it just because that offense is, when it clicks, it's scary. I mean, they're shooting 42% from three so far. You got to add a little grain of salt to that because I mean they've scored 90 plus points against the likes of Stonehill and North Florida, like LIU. I'm pretty sure if you and I ran a pick and roll with G Wizzy in the corner, we're putting up close to those numbers, at least 70 against some of those teams.
Yeah, very true.
Oh, but yeah, I think like I don't know. I mean, this is again, this sort of feels like the time of year where they start to turn it on and have a more business-like approach and just take care of who they're supposed to take care of. So I want to see them do it if they can do it one more game this upcoming Saturday against Wake Forest. Sneaky tough place to play, Wake Forest. I'll give a little insight into the lay of the land of Wake Forest fans for people who don't live in ACC country. You're going to go into that arena. There's going to be a lot of guys with some swoopy hair, some barber jackets, some bean boots. They're going to have their platinum blonde like soccer moms next to them. The wives, this is the middle-aged crowd, going to be wearing their golden gooses, Louis Vuitton bags. But they get rowdy, they get really passionate, they have a strong hatred for their opponents, especially if it's highly ranked teams coming in big spots. So Wake Forest, tough place to play, and they've been playing really well too. And I mean, Hunter Sallis has been on a tear. So if Miami can get back-to-back wins at home at Clemson and on the road against Wake, I'll be ready to say they turned a corner and they are legit ACC contenders.
100%. You combine a home win with a really good home win against a good team with a road win back to back against a good team as well, I definitely would feel better about Miami than I do now. I'm not saying I feel bad about them, but I feel a lot better of them as a contender, like you said. And also shout out to Wake Forest's fan base. All good fan bases are rooted in hatred. And when you really think about it, like hatred is what it's built on. It sucks, but it's what makes college basketball great.
It's
But
true.
shout out to the Hurricanes. Congratulations on a really big win. Hoping to get on maybe a preview or another recap with my ACC brother and Riley because we always have a good time, and it doesn't make us watch Darvin Ham ruin our GOAT. So I appreciate you taking the time, Riley. Make sure you check out Riley's work over at Heat Check, and also check out my work over at Sleepers Media because that's where you are right now. That's the only place you can find my work. But we appreciate you. Go ACC. Go Hurricanes.